more. Here's what others are saying.
This is Amy Wishman at Life Choice Ministries in Manhattan, Kansas. Several board members and donors told me that this banquet was our best banquet ever. Thanks to J.J. Jasper.
Information on JJ's availability to speak at your event is at jjjasper.com.
About a year or so ago, I ran into Hannity, and he always tells me, he goes, Todd, those leftists, man, they hate you. I've never seen the leftists hate anyone like you. And I said, let me introduce you to Brian Fisher one of these days.
We have to get rid of the filibuster. The filibuster will stop us in our tracks. It is an antiquated thing that will stop us from saving the planet.
The whole climate crisis, as they call it, is not only fake news, it's fake science.
No legal source, no legal entity is guilty of obstruction of justice.
No legal entity has said to the contrary. You don't have to wait till you know every felony the president has committed.
Sir, with all due respect, you keep saying that he's committed felonies. There's not one legal entity that has said he committed felonies.
If immigration is a problem, it's the best possible problem for this country to have.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to the brand new broadcast edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, your congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent host.
As always.
And you, my friends, are my congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent listening audience.
As always.
So let's just jump into stuff. Glad to have you on the program. Had an opportunity to do an interview this morning with Todd Starnes. That was fun. Yeah. I just enjoyed that, and Jeff gave us a little snippet from the interview as part of the audio tease, so that was a good bit of fun. Give a little profile to the book, so it's all good.
I like when he found out that you went to Stanford University also. Do you remember when he was asking you about that?
Yeah. And I told him, I said, look, my parents didn't have to spend $25 million to get me in there either. Didn't have it, for number one. But I said, I just earned my way in, SAT scores and extracurricular activities and GPA and all that. So that's how I got in.
By the way, that interview will be on podcast on afr.net after this show.
Okay, so after the show, a little bit later this afternoon, you can go to the podcast page and you can catch that interview I did with Todd Starnes this morning, and just before coming on air. The interesting thing, too, is he found out some things reading my bio that he didn't know. I've known Todd for years, and there was stuff about me that he just hadn't known. So
he actually would fill in for you once in a while when you were out.
Yeah, that's right. We've had Todd fill in on this program. So, all right. So anyway, thank God for that interview and the help that'll be to the book. That was fun. All right. So we do have the podcast. I want to remind you that this program is put up on the podcast page every day. I mean, shortly after the program is over, maybe 10 minutes after the program is over, the podcast is up. So if you missed the program and you want to listen to it, you can go back to the podcast page and you can listen to the program at your leisure. So hope you will do that. It's at afr.net. And if you want to buy a book, the Boy to Man book that I talked with Todd Starnes about today, go to afastore.net, afastore.net, pick one up. And pick one up in case you run across another father of a young 12-year-old boy that could benefit from it. All right, let's jump into the scriptures today. I want to talk today about communication in marriage. Well, just communication in general, but in particular, I want to talk about communication in marriage and share with you a little learning curve that I had to go through in my relationship with the executive producer. And this is from the book of James. I think if every married couple could just master this one verse, it would, and they would apply it Remember, James goes on to say, look, let's be doers of the word, not just hearers only. It doesn't do any good to hear the word and then not do it. But if every married couple in America would hear these words, they would ponder them in their hearts, they would think about them, and they would do their best to apply them in their relationship with their husband or with their wife, most communication problems in marriage could be resolved. Wouldn't be easy, because a lot of times you have to break years of communication habits that are bad. They're not good for the relationship. They don't lead toward reconciliation. So what James says here in James 1:19, know this, my beloved brothers, and brothers is a term that includes sisters too. Know this, my beloved brothers and sisters, let every man, every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness that God requires. Now, what he's saying here, look, you get in, and he's talking about situations where there's some kind of a disagreement. You got some kind of issue brewing. Maybe it's between you and your wife. You can't see eye to eye on this. And instead of being quick to listen, we are quick to speak. And what happens is that the tension in that conversation begins to rise. It begins to escalate. And it's not long before both of you are angry. Both of you are furious with each other. An explosion results, and that does damage, obviously, to the marriage relationship. So when James says, let everyone be quick to hear, quick to listen. In other words, you're in a conversation like that with your wife, and there's some kind of disagreement. She's unhappy about something, and you want to ask her what's going on, instead of getting ready to be defensive, because that's quick to speak, is being defensive. You know, anytime we're in a conversation with a spouse, with a husband or a wife, they're going to be upset, and 90% of the time they're going to be upset with us. And so we can sense that the blame is being directed at us. They are blaming us for what happened, and we think that's unfair. So we immediately begin to justify ourselves, and then and then she just keeps ratcheting up the volume to try to get through to us, get through to you about what's bothering her, and nothing happens. So Jeff is laughing. Why are you laughing?
Oh,
Jeff?
You sound like you have a lot of experience in this.
I'm going to let that pass. I imagine Debbie's sitting at home just kind of nodding her head, just kind of smiling. Well, let me tell you, the day that I really learned about this, Debbie and I were having a disagreement about something. I don't even remember what it was about, but we were getting ready for our day, and she had just hopped in the shower, and so we're talking to each other while she's in the shower, and I'm kind of drying off and getting dressed for the day. And she said something to me, and back up, Debbie had always told me, look, you don't listen to me. That was her complaint. You don't listen to me. And I was convinced that I did. I knew that I did. I was absolutely convinced that I did listen to her. So anyway, she's saying something in the shower, and I just immediately responded, kind of dismissed what she had said. And it just suddenly hit me. I'm there with a towel draped around me, and it suddenly hits me, Brian, you didn't listen to a word that she said. You made no effort to try to understand where she was coming from. You made no effort to understand the emotions that she was feeling and how they were connected to something you might have or might not have done. And you never tried to get any understanding of how she was feeling, how this situation impacted her, how it looked to her, how it felt to her, how it seemed to her from her vantage point. You were just quick to tell her why she was wrong and then move on in the conversation. And that's when I learned, I have got to start paying more attention to what Debbie has said. So we since then have really worked hard on this very thing. I don't know if we would put it in exactly these words, but, when we have some kind of a difference, what we try to do is to hear the other person. And what we learn to do is not accuse. you know, what Debbie and I have tried to learn to do with each other is say, look, yeah, I'm upset, and I want to tell you why. When you said that thing, this is how I felt. In other words, she's not blaming me. She's not saying that you made me feel this way. She's saying that when you said that thing or you did that thing, this is how I felt on the inside. Maybe this is what it reminded me of. This is the way it came across to me. So she's not accusing me. She's saying, look, I'm giving you a little bit of a peek into my soul, into what goes on inside of me, and she returns the favor. I'll say, well, you know, Deb, when you did that, this is how kind of it came across to me. Now, and you know, I don't want to do that to Debbie. I don't want to make her feel that way. She doesn't want to make me feel the way that I explained to her. So then that's when I have an opportunity to look at it. And our job, I see it as my job, is to try to do as best I can after hearing from her about how it affected her, to kind of look at it from her standpoint and to come to the place where I can say, you know, babe, I can see how you'd feel that way. And I'm really sorry that I said something that made you feel that way. I really don't want to do that. I don't ever want to do or say something that would make you feel that way. And that kind of softens her heart toward me, because she can tell that I'm sincere about that. It's not just, you know, it's just not words off a page. I really don't want to make her feel like that, and don't want to do things that inadvertently have that result. So then she's able to kind of settle herself down and able to explain to me how it felt. I'm able to say, look, I'm really sorry about that, because I don't. You know, it's not a groveling kind of apology. A lot of times you get in these and you feel like the only way I've got to get out of this thing is to just grovel on the floor and kind of beg for some kind of reprieve. That's not what this is about. This is about understanding each other. And then, you know, we had a conversation like that, you know, just a couple of nights ago, and just a matter of me trying to hear her out and understand how the whole thing had affected her based on what had been happening to her in her day, the load that she's carrying, and all that kind of stuff. And I was able to see what she was saying. I was able to understand how she could feel like that. You know, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't feel like I had done anything wrong. It's just that something that I had said, maybe without even really thinking about it, it produced a reaction in her that I didn't want her to have. And so we were able to kiss and make up. I didn't have to grovel. You know, I still apologized. Look, I'm really sorry, babe. I did not intend for you to feel that way. I did not mean it to come across that way. She could see that. She could understand that. And we got that thing patched up and had a very pleasant evening together. So anyway, that's the word from James. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So listen first and then speak. You know, Solomon says in Proverbs 18, this is an absolutely great verse in Proverbs. And I want to read it to make sure I get it right. But he's talking about these kind of disagreements. And, you know, you listen to one person and, man, they just sound absolutely great. Now I can't find it. It was the one that the first person who speaks sounds great until you hear the second person speak with his questions for the first person. And then all of a sudden, you know, everything doesn't sound quite so convincing. Yeah, here it is. Stumbled across it, Jeff. Thank you. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. All right.
What is that, 18 what?
Yeah, 18:17. Proverbs 18:17. You know, that's why we want to be very slow to jump to conclusions about something that's happened. Think about all the ink that was spilled and the words that were wasted on the Jussie Smollett case. He was charged with 16 felonies, had to show up in court today to enter a plea, pleaded not guilty, but 16 felony charges from what he had done, and everybody was on his side when the story first broke. All right, let's go to prayer, take these things before the Lord. Lord, I pray this day in your name for myself. I pray for my family. I pray for my marriage. I pray for Jeff and Rob and for their wives and their communication and marriage. I pray for every man, woman, and child listening to this program right now and praying along with me. I pray by the transforming work of your Holy Spirit each of us may be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Remind us that our anger, the anger of man, does not produce the righteousness of God. Please forgive us and assist us in communication. In Jesus' name, amen.
And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people to myself. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Full weaponization of the federal government to crush a political opponent. Politicians and a political party that bill themselves as pro-life while refusing to actually do what's in their power to stop the killing of little babies. The successful and unrelenting advance of regressivism. All of these are signs that our national condition is not merely a natural phenomenon, it's spiritual. Civic engagement without spiritual engagement produces political roller coasters. National course correction will only come by national repentance. We must elevate him.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Lamb, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. The onslaught against people of faith continues. An 84-year-old widow who is a Bible study leader at the California Veterans Home where she lives is being threatened with eviction. Why? She had a discussion with another resident in the Veterans Home about heaven and hell, and this caused the other resident to lose sleep. So the government says that this is elder abuse. Artist Brew's late husband was a World War II and Korea War veteran. For the last 9 years, Brew, a Messianic Jew, had been leading a Bible study in a shared space for fellow residents in the Veterans Home. She was told to cease and desist or be evicted because sharing her faith with another resident was considered, quote, elder abuse, emotional abuse, and otherwise illegal, end quote. Sharing your faith with another resident is illegal? Haven't you people ever heard of the First Amendment? Her attorney from the Pacific Justice Institute, who's taken up the case, sums it up about as well as it can be summed up. Quote, throughout this process, we have been deeply disturbed, not only by the lack of constitutional guidelines, ineptitude, and lack of due process in the investigation, but even more by the notion that discussing religious views on the eternal state of the soul is somehow elder abuse or emotional abuse. Our client's husband fought for his country to preserve the freedoms now being threatened by CalVet. Our veterans deserve better, end quote. So do all Americans. We must be eternally vigilant against this kind of suppression of our First Amendment constitutional rights. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio, the home of high-definition radio, Ultra 4K radio, more content per cubic inch of air than any other place on your radio dial. All right, a couple of quick items before we jump into sound bites and other content. You probably heard about this, but Lisa Page testified last year. The transcripts just now coming to light, and transcripts from Peter Strzok have also come to light that are equally damning for their cause and put them in a very bad light, the light that we always knew they were in, but this has been kept secret. Nobody leaked this stuff, which Republicans are inclined to keep follow the rules and keep things in confidence where they're supposed to be kept in confidence. But Lisa Page, remember, she's a former FBI lawyer. She and her lover, Peter Strzok, Peter Smirk, I call him because of that perpetual smirk he wears on his face, that Lisa Page testified last year that officials in the Bureau, including James Comey, who was the FBI director at the time, discussed Espionage Act charges against Hillary Clinton. Remember, people knew by this time that she had a private server set up and she was dealing with classified information over this unsecured server. No kind of internet protocols in place to keep this from being pilfered by anybody who could. There was just no firewall at all to penetrate. So she was doing this on her private server. Remember, she deleted 30,000 emails. We don't know what was in them. I'm willing to bet that there were other emails that had classified type information she just didn't want anybody to know about because she'd be dead to rights on the deal. And Lisa Page says, look, we talked about this in the FBI, in the Department of Justice, and we were going to press charges against Hillary Clinton that were going to cite gross negligence. Remember, gross negligence is the term that's in the law. If you handle classified information with gross negligence, that's a legal term. Term of art means you're in big trouble. That's a felony offense. And remember how James Comey changed all that to extreme recklessness. She wasn't grossly negligent. She was extremely careless or reckless. I forget what the word was. But anyway, it took it out of the realm of things that are technically and on the face of it illegal and criminal behavior. And then Comey went out on July 5 and cleared Hillary of all the charges. Page told the committee that she was giving this testimony before that the FBI did not blow over gross negligence, meaning just pass it over and not give it weight. Responding to a question from Representative John Ratcliffe, Page testified the FBI, including Comey, believed that Clinton may have committed gross negligence. We, in fact, the director, this is her talking, because on its face it did seem like, well, maybe there's a potential here for this to be the charge. And we had multiple conversations with the Justice Department about charging gross negligence. So she says, look, even James Comey, thought this was gross negligence, thought that she had violated the law regarding the handling of secret information and confidential information. And I remember James Comey, he came out on July 5 and he spent 12 minutes in that press conference talking about all of the things, all of the crimes that Hillary Clinton had committed. You remember that? Yeah. And you are dead certain listening to this that he's leading up to an indictment against Hillary Clinton for violating espionage laws about how you handle secret information. And then he gets to the end and says, well, no reasonable prosecutor would ever prosecute somebody. I don't believe she intended to do it. And intent, of course, had nothing to do with the law, nothing to do with violating the law. And furthermore, James Comey was taking this out of the hands of the Attorney General. It's the Attorney General's decision whether to decide whether to file charges or not. So James Comey was stepping way over his bounds in doing that whole thing. So she says, look, the committee, we did not blow over gross negligence. She testified that everybody in the FBI, everybody looking at the information believed there was a strong possibility that she had committed gross negligence. And that's why, by the way, you have an investigation. Remember, special counsel is called to investigate a specific criminal accusation. You haven't made up your mind yet, but there's enough data that makes this look like a crime that it really needs to be investigated. And that's what a special counsel is supposed to do. Here's the crime, gross negligence in the handling of confidential information, and we need you, special counsel, to investigate this in Hillary Clinton's part. So she says, on its face, it looked like this was illegal behavior, criminal behavior. But she said this, that the DOJ, this is Obama's Department of Justice, put a stop to that. Quote, the Justice Department's assessment was that it was both constitutionally vague, so that they did not actually feel they could permissibly bring that charge. That's the gross negligence. Well, I got to tell you, if you're handling national defense information, you're handling top secret information, and you're handling it on a server that's in somebody's closet outside their bathroom in Colorado, does not take a rocket surgeon to figure out that that is grossly negligent conduct. Nothing vague or ambiguous about that. So they kept, the FBI kept thinking about a gross negligence charge, but Obama's Department of Justice kept pushing back against it. The advice we got from the department, they did not think, well, that a charge was sustainable. So that's how it went. Radcliffe asked her, when you say advice you got from the department, you're making it sound like it was the department, that's the Department of Justice, that told you you're not going to charge gross negligence because we're the prosecutors and we're telling you we're not going to. And she said that is correct. So she got the clear message from the DOJ, well, you can charge that if you want, but there's no way we're prosecuting that. So the Obama's Department of Justice, part of the deep state, part of this effort to launch a coup d'etat against the lawfully elected president of the United States. I mean, that is sedition, that is treason against the United States, and ought to be treated and prosecuted as such. All right, let's see where we go from here. This is interesting, by the way. I'll just mention this in passing. I want to talk about this college scandal for a second. But Hillary Clinton won the popular vote back in 2016, I think by 1.5 million votes, somewhere in that neighborhood. And, of course, the Democrats are complaining that she really won the election because the Electoral College is just not fair, it's unjust, it's not representative, we got to get rid of the Electoral College. And there are a lot of states out there that are functionally getting rid of the Electoral College. And the way they're doing it, it's a legal subterfuge, but the way they're doing it is by saying, okay, in our state, we're just going to make it a law that whoever gets the most votes in the country is going to get all of our electoral votes. So what we're going to do first is look at the popular election results, and whoever gets the most votes, we're going to give that person all of our electoral votes. It doesn't matter who wins the electoral vote in our state. But there isn't anything more anti-democratic. You talk about taking the voice of the people and just hosing it. That's it right there. But this is interesting. Now, some of the details here about square miles, I've seen some of these figures contested, but you'll clearly get the idea because it focuses. If we were to do this, if we were to go to a popular vote, let's just elect our people on popular vote. That's democracy. Whoever gets the most votes wins. And you'll see why the Electoral College is a safeguard for the voice of the people. Now, there's 5 counties that encompass the city of New York. Remember, Hillary Clinton won by 1.5 million votes, 5 million votes, something like that. In Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Richmond, and Queens, those 5 counties, Hillary Clinton got 2 million more votes than Klimp. That's a combination of Clinton and Trump. She got 2 million more votes than Donald Trump did in those 5 counties. So those 5 counties in New York City alone more than accounted for Hillary Clinton winning the popular vote in the entire country. You know how many square miles those 5 counties comprise? How much area they take up? 319 square miles. Now, the United States is almost 4 million square miles. So you got a situation where these 5 counties that take up about 319 square miles, they get to decide who our president is, and the people that live in the other 3,797,000 square miles forget about it. Your vote does not count. And remember, this is where people get the Electoral College wrong. Remember, the Electoral College, the purpose of the Electoral College is for states to elect the president. I want to repeat that because everybody's got it wrong. The people of the United States do not elect the president of the United States. The states do. The states elect the next president of the United States. How do they do it? They have an election in their state. Whoever gets the most votes, the elector of that state is given instructions to go cast their votes for that candidate. That's how every state is represented Now, you go to this straight popular vote, you can forget about it. You get California, 43 million people or some such thing. New York, I don't know, 38 million people, whatever. You get those states, Illinois, umpteen million people. Those 3 states are going to control the election. You might as well forget about campaigning anywhere else in the country. The rest of the country would be a forgotten district. All right. Let's talk about this college scandal here just for a second. Todd Starnes, we were talking about that on my interview with him this morning. And, I didn't have I didn't have parents with the wealth to go out and cheat. So I had to get in the old-fashioned way.
Stanford is one of the schools that's under investigation, or has
or that they tried to cheat to get people in. And I think almost certainly you'd have to have some buy-in from somebody in the admissions office. You would think. Now, what this guy was doing, I mean, one set of parents spent $25 million to get their student into an elite college of their choice. You know what this guy was doing is he was faking athletic profiles. There's one example of a guy pole vaulting, and what this guy had done is photoshopped. I'm serious. He had photoshopped the student that was applying, photoshopped his face over the face of the pole vaulter, and you could see the standard behind him indicating he was somewhere in the 18-foot range in the pole vault. Well, any college in the country is going to take that guy. Yeah. But that's the kind of stuff they were resorting to. One guy would get hold of their SAT scores before they were turned in for grading, and he would correct them. He would correct mistakes on their SAT test, and then that's what would get turned in to the admissions office. So a big, huge scam. It's all been busted up, and Stanford, as Jeff mentioned, was one of the schools that was involved in this. And you were going to say something, Jeff?
Yeah, I was going to say one person they probably should be taking a look at is David Hogg. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, David Hogg, remember, was the Parkland High School student. He was out there. He became the smartest person in the world instantly overnight on the subject of gun control. And he was just a little arrogant. I mean, the words that come to my mind are not words I can use on family radio.
No.
But you remember him. He was that little kid that just very full of himself. Yeah. And one of the backstories there was that he'd applied to I don't know how many colleges.
Yeah, it was quite a few.
And he couldn't get in. That's what he was complaining about. Look, I've applied to every decent college in the country, and nobody accepted me.
Yeah, well, Harvard accepted him at the end of last year. And that is despite his significantly low SAT score. Apparently, Harvard's average SAT score is a whopping 250 points higher than what he got. So, I mean, how do you get accepted into Harvard with such a low SAT?
Well, and that's obviously, that's a celebrity admission there is what that is, because David Hogg became
guess what his major is going to be?
Gun control celebrity.
I'm sorry.
What his
major is going to be?
Major is going to be, I can't.
Political science.
Political science. That's it. Rob got it.
I was thinking maybe it was going to be archery or firearms
pole vaulting
or something like that. What's that?
You probably got in on pole vault scholarship.
Yeah, he was the pole vault guy. Yeah. So anyway, so that shows you. I mean, you can just be a celebrity, and that's going to cut some ice. I mean, he just did not. There's a reason why all those colleges turned him down. Now think about what this means if you're Harvard. This is where it's not in their long-term interest to do this kind of thing, because what this tells you is David Hogg does not have the brain power to be successful in an environment like Harvard. This guy's liable to flunk out. That's why you're not doing minorities, for instance, that have low SAT scores. You're not doing them any favors by cutting them a break and artificially boosting their scores or lowering the standards so that they get in, because they're not going to be able to hack it. So they're constantly going to be struggling through their entire college career. They're going to be feeling self-esteem problems because they can't keep up. They might flunk out, and that feels terrible. Whereas if they went to a less competitive school, they could do just fine. Graduate with a degree. You know, not everybody, in fact, most people in America that have successful careers did not go to a top-tier school. So you can be perfectly successful. You can get a perfectly adequate education by going to less competitive schools and applying yourself and working hard. Good education available all over the place. But now Harvard, let's say they cut this guy so much of a break, he graduates. This guy's going to go out into the world and be an absolutely wretched representation of Harvard because he's not going to know anything. Focal Point, American Family Radio. We'll be right back.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
It's day 9 of Medicare for All, which will have no deductibles, no coinsurance, no copayments, and no similar charges for any benefits provided by the program. That's because taxpayers will fund the program. And no provider can charge you for any services available through Medicare for All. But what's that mean? Since the program's benefits are comprehensive, and since providers can't charge you for them, what happens when Medicare for All denies you access to the treatment, medications, hospitalization, and other services you need? That's right. You won't be able to pay to get it because it will be illegal to take your money. Tell your neighbors the truth about Medicare for All.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Miki Addison.
My challenge to you was to evangelize your children and to disciple your children and to give them the truth, because if you don't do that, then we have a culture that's waiting in the wings to disciple your kids and to make converts. And so I really believe and I expect the Lord to really set some people free today.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is coming June 20th through the 22nd. Learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
The purpose of government is to secure God-given or inalienable rights to man.
America's premier historian, David Barton.
John Dickinson, who's also a signer of the Constitution, he said, an inalienable right is a right which God gave to you and which no inferior power has a right to take away.
Wall Builders Live captures the ideas of the Founding Fathers and then applies those ideas to the issues of today. Sunday morning at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point, the home of the fastest 60 minutes in American media. Getting ready to round the final turn, heading for the finish line, looking for the checkered flag. I want to mention this before we move on. You know, I think one of the reasons these celebrities, you can kind of excuse them for, there's no excuse for this. I mean, what am I saying? They're bribing their way into colleges. But one of the reasons they do this is they know that if their child is white, the deck is stacked against them, because there are so many spots that are reserved for minorities. You know, when my daughter applied to Stanford, I just did a little checking on this, and we didn't have $25 million to try to get her in, and she did not get in. But I looked at the student body makeup at Stanford when she was applying. This is back around 2000, 2001. And the student body at Stanford that time was 53% white. The American population at that time was 74% white. So there's just a built-in racial barrier that white students would have to clear in order to get into Stanford that no other students would have to. And these celebrities know that. So they're trying to just balance the playing field by buying their way into an elite school.
You know who else knows that? Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, yeah. In fact, that's good. Finish what you were going to say.
Oh, that was it. That was it.
Well, you know, this is a crack up. She's out there complaining about this. She's upset with these parents that are lying and these students that are lying to get into college.
Oh,
Elizabeth Warren's upset about this.
That's pretty much a definition of hypocrisy right
there.
Yeah,
Liz, you were just way ahead of your time, girl. All right. Now,
I think I've got a clip of her talking about that.
Do we? Let's see.
We don't on this one, but I got one from earlier.
All right.
If I can find it, I'll let you know if I find it.
Okay. We'd love to get her on record for that. Before you do that, Rob, while you're looking for that, let's grab clip number 15. This is on the topic of gun control and David Hogg getting into Harvard despite being completely unqualified. And again, I said it's not good for these schools to do this. Top-tier schools, they're not going to produce top-tier graduates if they let people like David Hogg in. He's not going to be a good representative of the kind of education you can get at a place like Harvard. So it's self-defeating in the long run. Now, Jan Schakowsky, representative from Illinois, big-time gun control person, wants to disarm you, wants to disarm me. Now here she's talking about Ilhan Omar, this anti-Semitic congressman that they tried to rebuke and couldn't bring themselves to do it because Islam is too politically correct. Now, here's what Jan Schakowsky said. Listen carefully to this.
For the first time in 25 years, passed 2 gun safety legislation. Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman, is under tremendous attack, death threats. I think maybe she needs some security.
So Jan Schakowsky, nobody should have guns except the people that are friends of Ilhan Omar. Yeah. We need to make sure that they got weapons to protect the poor girl.
Guns good for us, guns bad
for you. That's the equation. So you said you found a tape from, this is a clip from
Morning
Liz
Joe.
Warren on the Morning Joe. Right. All right, let's listen.
So as a parent, how much sympathy would you have for these parents who are embroiled in this alleged cheating scandal?
Zero.
Okay.
Zero. I got no sympathy at all for anybody who would do what I did. I think what I did is absolutely despicable. I think anybody else does that is likewise despicable. All right, let's grab some clips real quickly here. We have some clips on impeachment. Again, this has become a mirage for the Democrats, rapidly just fading from view. People aren't going to be talking about this at all after a while because there's nothing there. There's no chance it could happen. Now, listen, this is Brad Sherman, representative from California. And remember, I've told you about Jake Tapper. He's one of the few journalists that occasionally veers into actual journalism. And here's one of those examples where with Brad Sherman, who thinks he's going to be in for an easy ride because he's on the Counterfeit News Network, Brad Sherman, one of the big proponents of impeachment, and runs into a buzzsaw with Jake Tapper.
Well, first, he met the legal standard. He's committed several felonies, including violation of 1512b3 of the Criminal Code, obstruction of justice on at least 2 occasions, probably 3, and that's just in his first 6 months.
All right, well, that's your opinion, but no legal source, no legal entity is guilty of obstruction of justice.
No legal entity has said to the contrary. You don't have to wait till you know every felony the president has committed.
Sir, with all due respect, you keep saying that he's committed felonies. There's not one legal entity that has said he committed felonies, and saying
there's not one legal entity that said that his firing of Comey was not a violation of 1512b3.
That's not how the law works.
So let me give you kind of a parallel. If I were to say to you, hey, I'm going to be I'm destined to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Well, who in the world is saying that you're going to be in the Hall of Fame? Well, there's nobody out there saying that I'm not. Yeah, that's the kind of argumentation here. Yeah. And like Tapper said, that's not how the law, it's not how impeachment works. All right, now here's Sherman. That's not Bob Sherman. Brad Sherman. Here's a second excerpt from his conversation with Jake Tapper.
Until we have much more public support, we're not going to be able to remove him from office.
Well, that's certainly true because there is public support for investigating the president, but there is not public support at all, even close, to impeaching him or removing him from office. Speaker,
we're at 50% in some of the polls for removing him from office, but it's going to take 2/3 of the United States Senate, which means it would take at least 2/3 of the American people to get Republican senators on board in large numbers.
So basically, he agrees with Jake Tapper. They are nowhere near close to having the numbers they need to convict him. I mean, you can impeach him if you get a majority of the House, but the Senate has to conduct the trial and render the verdict. You got to get 2/3 to vote guilty in order to get a conviction and removal. And Jake Tapper is the ones pointing out, look, no chance that you could get Trump removed from office. Not enough votes there to do it. And the Senate, by the way, has blocked Donald Trump's national emergency bill. There is a national emergency at the border. We've talked with you about this. He declared a national emergency to deal with it. And they have voted no. They voted it down. The Senate has. I think there were 11 senators at one point that were looking at voting against the president. Now, they're going to have to answer for that in 2020. No question about that. They're going to have to answer for that in 2020. Rand Paul, I think, was the one guy that probably had some decent constitutional reasons to vote against him. But, one of the reasons that they do this, they voted against it, is they don't want the Democrats to come along after they're gone and have a Democratic president using this emergency power to do something on climate change or gun control. Well, this is stupidity on steroids. I mean, it's just, you cannot go broke underestimating the political intelligence of the Republican Party. It's impossible. They're saying, look, we can't do it now because if we do it now, the Democrats will do it then. Well, the reality is they're going to do it whether you do it now or not. Listen to Jay Inslee, clip number 4. He's the governor of the state of Washington. He's running for president, and his whole platform is global warming. Now, I'm hoping this guy does run for the presidency, and I hope for some reason that takes him out of the state of Washington where my kids live, because they got to live under this kind of knuckleheaded stuff. But here's Jay Inslee declaring for the presidency what his campaign is going to be and what a part of it's going to be.
We have to get rid of the filibuster. The filibuster will stop us in our tracks. It is a vestige of an antebellum era. It is an antiquated thing that will stop us from saving the planet. So that needs to go, and I'm challenging the other people aspiring to this office to agree with me that they will agree to get rid of the filibuster. This is absolutely necessary if we're going to defeat this beast. And it is time to shake up D.C., and one of the ways to shake it up is to end the filibuster and have majority rule like Americans deserve. Only then can we fight climate change, and that's job number one, to get this thing done.
Now, what have we been saying? What have we been saying since 2016? Yep. Mitch, in the filibuster. In the filibuster, it's killing you. You're giving the Democratic Party the weapons to stop you in your tracks and to stop Donald Trump's agenda in its tracks. We would have funding for the wall if it weren't for the filibuster. They stop every good bill that comes along. It's only one time a year where you can get a simple majority to pass a major piece of legislation, and that's on the budget. You can only use it on a reconciliation thing, and that's once a year. So Jay Inslee saying to America, first thing I'm going to do as a president, as a Democratic president, I'm going to lead a charge to get rid of that cotton-picking filibuster, because it just gives the Republicans kind of the armor to stop everything that we are doing. All right, let's drop back one clip to clip number 3. Here is Sarah Sanders. Here's her response to Nancy Pelosi saying, I'm not a big fan of impeachment.
I think Nancy Pelosi is clearly already starting to lose control of her party. I think we're seeing that on a lot of the things that have taken place over the last couple of weeks. I'm glad that she sees what the rest of us see and that there's no reason, no cause for impeachment.
All right, good for Nancy Pelosi. She's not supporting impeachment. What's his name? Adam Schiff. He doesn't support impeachment any longer. So you don't have really any prominent people in the Democratic Party or people with any kind of power in the party that are now lobbying for impeachment. Well, let's talk about immigration just for a second. Here's Beto O'Rourke, clip 5. Beto O'Rourke running for president, and here's what he had to say about part of his platform.
And all of us, wherever you live, can acknowledge that if immigration is a problem, it's the best possible problem for this country to have. And we should ensure that there are lawful paths to work, to be with family, and to flee persecution.
All right, Beto O'Rourke, I think he's number 15 or 16 to declare for the Democratic national nomination.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Gonna need a bigger boat. We're gonna need a bigger shark to bite a hole in the bottom of that boat. And he says, look, immigration is the best problem to have. What sort of ludicrosity is that? Illegal immigration is the best problem to have? Ask Kate Steinle's parents how they feel about that. Ask Bambi Larson's parents, who just got murdered by an illegal alien that DHS tried to deport 6 times and California wouldn't let them. Ask her family how they feel about immigration, whether it's the best problem for us to have.
You know, Beto voted against Kate's law.
Yeah.
Speaking of Kate Steinle, how can you vote against something like that?
I don't know. And I'm looking at an article here. I think Jeff put me onto this, by Stephen Camarota, who's the director of research at the Center for Immigration Studies. 63% of households that are headed by a non-citizen used at least one welfare program, compared to 35% of native-headed households. That is, people that are born in America. 35% of those families use at least one welfare program. Those that invaded our country illegally, 63% of them, believe it or not, are on welfare. Well, non-citizens. Now, Jeff, you were talking about another thing that the president is going to do that, if it goes through, is going to help with this out-of-control problem on the border.
Yeah, he's trying to change the designation of drug cartels in Mexico to be designated as terrorist organizations. Now, he is going to need the cooperation or agreement to a certain extent with the nation of Mexico, because what that would do is actually expand law enforcement beyond law enforcement. Now you'd be able to use military and different things to take on.
You'd have authorization because they can engage in dealing with drug cartels.
The way it's worded is that the military could be used in a way to discourage transportation or of weapons or material that would harm U.S. citizens. Well, I think what they mean by discourage is like drones.
Drop something on them.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, real quickly. I think what we ought to do, and I'm going to close with this, I think what we ought to do is we ought to hire chickens to patrol the border. Chickens in a school farm in northwestern France are believed to have grouped and killed a juvenile fox. The fox entered the coop, this is in France, that has 3,000 hens in it, like a smorgasbord for a fox, through an automatic door hatch, and the door closed on him, and the chickens pecked him to death.
Wow.
Did I get all of that in before?
We're still going.
You got on there. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you're a minute early, but that's okay. I want to say, have you seen some of the videos of chickens chasing kids and stuff like that? I mean,
well, man, 3,000 hens. I thought sure that my time was up. Anyway,
hey, I had a hen chase me when I was about 5 years old. Scared me to death. It ran me around my grandfather's chicken farm.
Yeah.
Well, this poor fox goes into the coop, and it's got an automatic hatch door that locked him in there with 3,000 protective hens, and they just pecked that poor little guy to death. All right, that's it for today. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap, and never forget we are fighting a winnable war. See you tomorrow.
Now we're done.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Secular